sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, I'm Virginia Jones, and welcome to the podcast that I make with my sister, who is a therapist. I'm a stand-up comedian, and I have been for quite a long time. She's a therapist, and she has been for almost exactly the same amount of time, and her name is Laura Ryan.
Hi, I'm Laura Ryan, but my main credit is sister to Snicker Slinger, Virginia Jones.
Now that sounds like I'm throwing Halloween candy. On this podcast, we take turns researching and presenting a topic that we're interested in. Sometimes it's a listener topic. If you have one of those, you can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. This week it's my turn. But before we get into it, Laura would like to share something from Zach's Corner.
If you've been listening lately, you will have heard our latest segment, Zach's Corner. So here's our new installment. So Zach wrote the show this week and said, I really need to stop starting the podcast while driving. Childhood neglect. Zach's Corner? Free tire screech sound effect. I've been invited, but probably can't afford to go to Singapore in February. Now I'm wondering if I should try to go anyway to capitalize on my proximity to Singapore's favorite sister-based mental health and pop culture podcast. I think you could be right, Zach. That's me. Look, here are my unanswered Instagram messages to Laura Ryan LMFT. I would say send me some MSAT stickers that I can stick around the city, but that would probably get me imprisoned and caned.
Yeah, I don't want you to be caned.
This is my response. Dear Zach, we are so glad that you appreciate Zach's Corner.
But now that Zach's Corner is about Zach's Corner, it's getting very meta in here.
You said in the last episode that it's a house of mirrors, and that's essentially what we're doing. I hope you had a great birthday. Maybe just get the face tattoo and you can advertise anywhere that you go. Just a thought. Sorry, Laura didn't respond. She never checks that account. Thank you for your commitment to boost our profile in Singapore. # don't get caned.
I have been in Singapore. We were getting off the airplane. It was a work trip. And so I was with a female coworker who happened to be a model. She was chewing gum as we got off the plane. And that is not allowed anywhere in Singapore. You can't sell it. You can't buy it. You can't chew it. I said, you better spit that gum out because now we're in Singapore. And she said, but I'm an American. And then 2 gun-toting thugs in full militaria took her by the elbows and guided her to a trash can to spit out her gum. And guess who's not used to being treated that way? Models.
As a model, I can speak to that.
Thank you, Zach. We're glad you're enjoying Zach's Corner. Laura, we have done Irresponsible Diagnoses episodes for musicians. We've done it for comedians.
For crazy women living in an old rotten house.
We've done it for fictional characters. But one of my main interests is not represented in that fold, and that is fine art.
You mean fine artists? It's harder to diagnose a painting.
Yeah, paintings do not have any mental issues at all because they are canvas with stuff on top. We're going to do fine artists and their presumed mental illnesses.
Did you know that Pablo Picasso was never called an a-hole?
Thank you, Jonathan Richman. Pablo Picasso was never called an a-hole. And the observation is correct. He was so famous and he behaved like a giant a-hole all the time. Everybody was charmed by him or charmed by his fame or his riches or whatever. But in fact, the only thing he was really was an a-hole. What brought me to this topic was one of my favorites, Big Ed Munch.
Edvard
Munch, because there's a book about him that was published in 1990. Edvard Munch, The Life of a Person with Borderline Personality as Seen Through His Art. I know you're thinking, but what is it in Danish? It's Et livsløb en grand personlighed forstået gennem hans billeder.
I wasn't wondering.
So borderline personality disorder was not something that someone was talking about in Edvard Munch's time. His struggles are well documented. He had an intense fear of abandonment, chronic feelings of emptiness and impulsive behavior, and alcoholism. His art reflected these struggles. His relationships with women especially. He had 2 kinds of women in his paintings, angels or fiends. Some of his women paintings are Vampire 2. He did the Kiss 1 through 4, which is 2 characters whose faces are melting together in their kiss, which can be very sexy, but can be very frightening. And the Madonna, he did 4 different times. She's a lady in flagrante. Sometimes there's a baby fetus Jesus. And then he also did paintings of his little sister and women in his life who were delicate little angels. He had a sister who died very young. He had real problems with women. Another interesting thing about his painting is that he would paint the same topics over and over and over again. He titled them things like despair, anxiety, sick mood at sunset, of course, the scream, melancholy. And then when he got done painting them, a lot of them he stored outside of his house in Norway. A lot of his paintings have animal marks or places where water and snow has fallen on them. And it almost seems like the act of painting was the important thing. And then the paintings were just something he would poop out. That's not important.
I was thinking, is he trying to be super artsy and get animals involved and have them co-create his art?
Sure. I mean, that's a very modern concept. You would open your art up to the chaos of the elements, but I don't know if he was operating on that level. I think he was just, I painted this, get it out of here. Let's move on to the new one.
And if I just look at the work itself, I don't know very much about him. It screams isolation and sadness, and the color palette he uses is really dark. It's a lot of landscape painting, but there's no people in it. It's not made to look realistic. It's a painting that's artistic looking, but there aren't people in it, and that's kind of unusual.
And he had a lot in common with Van Gogh in this time. He was painting a little bit after him, but he did do very stylized landscapes. And he even had a painting called Starry Night. But you're right. Even if there's not people in his paintings, the entire environment looks disturbed and disturbing.
There are sometimes a person and then there'll be other people sort of farther away, but everyone looks like when there is a human in the painting, they're alone.
They're either alone or they're being consumed by another person. There was one painting where he had a couple dancing, but it's almost a frenetic fever joy.
Like bipolar.
Yes, it doesn't look healthy. His most famous painting is The Scream, which is widely seen as an expression of anxiety, especially modern anxiety, just the angst of being alive.
Didn't that painting get stolen?
This painting has been stolen twice, Laura. You are up on your fine art news. It was stolen in 2004 from the Munch Museum because it was in Norway. The guards didn't have guns or anything. The people just came in, had bolt cutters and cut it off the wall and took it. It was also stolen from the National Gallery in 1994 by a well-known Norwegian footballer, Paul Enger. He set up a ladder, climbed through a window, and simply took one of the paintings.
Why?
He hid the painting at home inside his living room table. I think he just loved it. He said, "No one was thinking about the screen before I stole it. The picture meant a lot to me. It may be the world's greatest symbol today." He was just a football player who fell in love with this painting.
No one was thinking about the Scream in 2004. Are you kidding me, dude?
He also stole his painting Vampire in 1998. So he was a big fan of Munch.
This same person stole two separate paintings at different times
and served jail sentences for both 5 and 7 years. The Scream inspired the Scream films.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's fun.
Director Wes Craven has expressed his admiration for the artist instead of the artwork. It is a classic reference to pure fear. That's how he sees it. Even the aliens in Doctor Who are said to have been inspired by the Scream. You have only 60 minutes in which to see the Scream. He did it 4 times. He did a painting, a drawing, a print, and maybe a crayon drawing. They are displayed in rotation. Each hour, one of the artworks is unveiled while the other 2 disappear. The images cannot be exposed to light all the time because it affects the color pigments. Edvard Munch's works would have had a much shorter lifespan if they were not protected. So it takes some good timing to get to see your favorite version of the Scream.
It's too bad they found the original in a ditch behind his house.
How did the Scream get famous? Great question. It was the lithograph that first became known outside Norway. It was reproduced in the magazine La Revue Blanche in 1895. The following year, it appeared in an American magazine, Mademoiselle, and was used as a cover illustration for a book about mental illness in the early 1900s.
Because a magazine produced it, it became a lot more popular.
Because that's how word would get around about things at that time.
They didn't have the internet? Why didn't somebody just pop it on the internet?
Why didn't they have a video of it? Great question.
Why didn't they put it on Instagram? I mean, that would have probably gotten a lot of hits.
Something else that people may not know about the Scream, they were executed on cardboard. The choice of material is a mystery and no one has a good answer. Light, temperature, humidity, and oxygen affect the color pigments in the picture and break down paper and cardboard over time.
All of them were on cardboard?
All of them were on cardboard. He did paint on canvas, but famously also painted a lot on cardboard.
I mean, it's a fun thing to paint on, but it just doesn't really hold up over time.
I think he was just getting a lot of Amazon packages at the time.
I get it. Yeah.
Like, this is handy.
Well, this is already here. Just got to put some gouache over it.
He was recycling. He was an early upcycler. I've got 2 quotable quotes from Edvard Munch, who probably suffered from borderline personality disorder. "For my rotting body, flowers shall grow, and I am in them, and that is eternity." I really like that quote. You're squinching your face, but I like it.
Really giving depression.
That is what makes all of us immortal.
No, immortality is painting the Scream. That is why this man is immortal.
It's on cardboard, Laura.
Not because of his dirt body.
He was also an early vegetarian, and he said, As a member of the vegetarian cult, I say, convert from cannibalism. Do not eat your uncles, aunts, and little cousins with shiny eyes.
That's been a tough one for me. That's actually been the hardest part of being a vegetarian.
Not eating people.
Yeah.
On this topic, we're going to move to, famously, when you say artist with mental illness, people say Vincent Van Gogh. Severe depression, mood swings, hallucinations, and they all affected his work. It's an interesting time, the 19th century in art. I actually took a class specializing in that because it's this blurred line between classical art and modern art.
You mean like Robin Thicke?
Exactly. A lot of the things that influenced modern day abstract expressionism and non-representational art were things that the artist may have been seeing through hallucinations. Is Starry Night what Vincent Van Gogh saw when he looked up?
You need to update your prescription.
Right. An interesting thing about Van Gogh, it is rumored, a little more than a rumor, that he did not cut off his own ear.
So what I hear you saying is that the cutting off his own ear was a rumor.
Paul Gauguin, we're not going to talk about him on this list because I think he was a prime a-hole in art, one of the biggest. He also had mental problems. He abandoned his family. He moved to Tahiti, and as a person with active syphilis, partnered with teenage girls. And then he moved away, and then he moved back and bedded another teenage girl. These are the paintings that are most famous when he is painting very young girls that he had sex with. Those are the ones that are worth the most. And so the art culture becomes complicit in these crimes. He doesn't deserve any nice treatment. He was a giant butthole. But he came to stay with Vincent, who was a fan of his work and was very honored to have Gauguin staying with him. Gauguin was broke and a grifter and was looking for a couch to crash out on. But they were two mentally ill men, and they had a conflict involving sabers. Mysteriously, the night that Vincent's ear got cut off, Gauguin moved out and went to a hotel, and he got out of the country. There are accounts given of this incident, but Van Gogh did tell people, yeah, I got real messed up and I cut off my own ear. But it's very probable that Gauguin did it.
Did he actually mail it to somebody like the story says?
He didn't mail it to anybody. He may have presented it to a woman. You can't stamp it. It's too wet.
But he didn't press charges with old Gauguin.
Even after they had this conflict, he was trying to protect this man's reputation.
A lot of good that did him. Vincent Van Gogh, as I'm just kind of briefly looking over his stuff, it's actually similar to Munch. It's a bunch of landscapes and they're all super isolated. He does have a lot of self-portraits though.
Fun facts about his most famous work, Starry Night. He painted it from the asylum where he was recovering from a mental breakdown. The view in the painting is an imaginary view. It's thought to be a composite from memories from the Netherlands and the church steeple from his homeland. The moon is a crescent moon, although because we know when it was painted, we know that the moon was nearly full at the time. I love art history. The cypress tree, often associated with death, can also be interpreted as a symbolic link between the earth and the sky. Despite the painting's later success, Van Gogh considered it a failure, feeling it was too far removed from nature and his true emotions. He did create this work about a year before his death by suicide.
What is your diagnosis for him?
What has severe depression, mood swings, and hallucinations?
Bipolar.
Yeah.
Do you have any manic episodes documented?
He did have manic episodes. He was very productive. He would paint 70 canvases in his last 70 days.
Wow, that's a lot. I've painted one small canvas about the size of my palm in the last 5 years.
This was exacerbated by other things. He had epilepsy, evidently. He struggled with alcohol abuse. He was in poor health most of his life. Malnutrition, because he was literally starving. Other possibilities suggested by medical literature include he may have had syphilis, so it's not something he would have had in common with Gauguin.
Maybe he got it from Gauguin. Have you thought about that?
Borderline personality disorder and the effects of sunstroke, although bipolar is the most widely accepted theory.
I've heard that you can get syphilis by sharing a water fountain.
And he did famously have a water fountain in his home.
Here's the diagnostic criteria for a bipolar episode. A distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated expansive or irritable mood, and abnormally and persistently increased goal-directed activity or energy, hence the painting a day, lasting at least 1 week, present most of the day, nearly every day, or any duration if hospitalization was necessary. It sounds like he was hospitalized for his mental health problems. During the period of mood disturbance and increased energy or activity, 3 or more of the following symptoms are present. Inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, probably not. Decreased need for sleep, sounds like a yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I don't know about this one because we don't have any record, but more talkative than usual or pressure to keep talking.
Would have been to himself mostly.
Yeah. Flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing, distractibility, increase in goal-directed activities, and excessive involvement in activities that have a high potential for painful consequences, e.g., engaging in syphilitic intercourse with Paul Gauguin and getting in a sword fight.
My quote for Van Gogh is, "How much sadness there is in life. Nevertheless, one must not become melancholy. One must seek distraction in other things, and the right thing is to work," which definitely echoes
my sister?
your findings.
That's not how you overcome depression. You overcome depression by managing your problems properly. But I have a feeling that our friend probably drank a lot, if I had to guess, and worked too much. What he was doing is he was just trying to avoid reality, which isn't the way that we overcome problems.
He created a surreality in his paintings. He was avoiding reality and making this other one that he maybe liked better.
I've been doing that lately on Sora.
Laura has fallen 2 feet into the world of AI video, and I have mixed feelings about it, but she's her own person and she's going to do what she wants.
I was telling my friend, I had a dream about her last night. In the dream, I was holding this mug.
Okay. It's a pink mug with ghosts on it.
Right. And this mug is now in my Sora videos because I posed with it. In the dream, I was trying to get Sora to make a sweater to match the mug, and my friend was braiding plaits in my hair.
Well, that sounds nice.
I was Sora-ing myself.
Self-Sora-ing.
Which is probably some sort of diagnosis in the future.
We touched on mental illness contributing to the increasing surrealism of art. The first person to really start painting in the abstract or an exaggerated version of reality was Francisco de Goya. In the first part of his life, he was painting royalty. He was doing portraits for rich people. He sometimes got a little political. Then he was ill and lost his hearing and had real psychological effects. He had depression, hallucinations, and delirium. So there's 14 paintings at the end of his life, and they're called the Black Paintings. And they are a huge departure from what he had done before. And the most famous of them is Saturn devouring his children, which is a giant monster telling the story of the early gods, that he had eaten all his children because he didn't want to be replaced with them.
So he, Saturn, was a narcissist.
Yes. But he painted these 14 paintings and he painted them on the walls in his house. He did not intend for them to be seen by anybody, exhibited by anybody, but they were ripped out and preserved. And that's what we have of de Goya today.
All of the old stuff is just straight up regular paintings of royalty. And
sometimes there's a little snarky, ugly pictures of famous people. And sometimes they would be upset and he would say, but this is what you look like. But they were used to this idealized.
This is what you look like.
Yes.
What I'm viewing is a very creepy looking man with this weird black hood on his head. It looks like he's stabbing needles into a baby.
The titles of some of his last paintings were Saturn devouring his sons, Witch's Sabbath, Two Old People Eating Soup, and Judith and Holofernes, which is, of course, the story of a lady who cuts a guy's head off because she was real mad at him.
Relatable. Who's this lady? Out of curiosity.
That is his painting of the Maja. And he painted 2 versions of that. There's one where she has clothing on. And then he also painted the naked Maja, where she is the same pose, the same everything, but she takes her clothes off. So that's fun.
Was that somebody he knew?
It was certainly a model.
It's funny because it's sort of between these 2 types. It doesn't look like a formal painting, but it also doesn't look like these insane black and white pencil things.
It's something he would have done for himself that was not a commissioned painting. So the word Maja, I've been saying Maja, but it's clearly Maya because it's Spanish, is a term for a type of lower class woman from Madrid during his era.
Sounds great and definitely not judgmental.
The nude Maya is controversial. It was confiscated by the Spanish Inquisition as obscene.
I get it.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. The subject's identity is a subject of speculation, but some theories suggest the Duchess of Alba or Pepita Tudo, who was a mistress of Goya's patron, Manuel de Godoy. Maybe she was royalty. Maybe she was a rich guy's mistress. We do not know. We know that she was naked. His black paintings are, as an art history studying, 19th century art history studying goth, some of my favorites. They're very upsetting. Scholars speculate his symptoms could be due to various causes, including syphilis, but also maybe lead poisoning from his paints. His condition is officially unknown. It's clear that he had neurological issues, dizziness, deafness, depression. He called it madness. He was hallucinating stuff that then he was putting on the canvas. There's a theory he may have had malaria early in his life, which had been treated with quinine, and that could have caused his hearing loss.
Did you know there's 2 phases of syphilis? So first you have sores, but then when you have latent syphilis, if you haven't treated it, it becomes latent. A lot of people are suggesting that our president has secondary syphilis. You won't have any symptoms maybe for years. In some cases, symptoms will never return. But if the infection is not gone, the bacteria remains dormant in your body. You might have a stroke. You have inflammation of the membranes around your brain and spinal cord, numbness, deafness, dementia, heart valve disease, aneurysms, inflammation of blood vessels, and personality changes.
It can also cause parts of your body to decay. People will lose their nose sometimes. Mental illness caused by late-stage syphilis was once a common form of dementia. Famous people who probably had syphilis: Charles VIII of France, Christopher Columbus, Benito Mussolini, Hitler, Ivan the Terrible.
So all the greats.
Charles Baudelaire, Al Capone, Leo Tolstoy, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Do you just have to be a complete scumbag to get syphilis? Because that's what I'm hearing right now.
Bram Stoker died of it. Guy de Maupassant. If you're doing it, you're getting syphilis. Lenin may have died of syphilis. Howard Hughes was diagnosed with neurosyphilis in 1932.
Howard Hughes, it seems like he may have had some mental illness.
My quotable quote from Francisco de Goya is, "The act of painting is about one heart telling another heart where he found salvation." And I'm assuming that quote is from earlier in his life, before he was painting demons and witches.
on the walls of his bathroom.
Right. This next one is Mark Rothko. Are you familiar with the paintings of Mark Rothko?
I know that he had syphilis. You can purchase his paintings in almost any gift store in a museum.
They're color field paintings, and he was, I believe, the first guy to do it, to make paintings just out of blocks of color and how they were interacting with each other and the nature of the brushstroke. He was lumped in with the abstract expressionists. He was working at the same time in the same place. He had chronic depression and alcoholism.
And he did paintings that any 9-year-old could do.
Oh, my kid could do that. Well, your kid didn't do that.
He made millions.
He's also a very influential painter to me. There's an installation in Houston, Texas called the Rothko Chapel. And it's a small room surrounded by black Mark Rothko paintings. And those are going to be paintings towards the end of his life. His colors changed due to his mental decline and physical decline. He had a lot of depression, and all of his colors changed to maroons and dark browns and blacks. His work became increasingly somber, reflecting a focus on pain, tragedy, and anguish. He did die by suicide in 1970. Many art historians and viewers connect his mental state to the dark, brooding, and emotionally intense nature of his later paintings, which often feature dark color fields like black, maroon, and blood red. The quotable quote from Rothko: "I'm not an abstractionist. I'm not interested in the relationship of color or form or anything else. I'm interested only in expressing basic human emotions: tragedy, ecstasy, doom, and so on."
But if you don't use any natural elements, then that makes you an abstract painter, dude.
Take it up with Dead Rothko. He felt that he was expressing emotions in their pure form.
He was, but that is still abstract painting.
Right. He wasn't looking at this as a color theory exercise. That was how he was expressing himself.
I could probably go to Lowe's and get a bunch of color swatches. I'd have my own original Rothkos right there.
Laura is currently exhibiting traits of the ugly American in her art history takedown. So my last artists are artists who were known for mental illness, which is not to say they weren't great artists. Mental illness is first. The most famous one is Richard Dadd. He's another 19th century artist. All of his paintings are these incredible, detailed, lush depictions of pixies and this rich fantasy land that he experienced. And most of them were painted when he was in the asylum.
I think I had one of these prints in my high school bedroom.
You would have been attracted to it.
Yeah, because it's hyper realistic and it's super crazy and there's tons and tons of details. Those were the main things I looked for in art in high school.
He was an art prodigy. At 17, he was already being seen as the future of art in London, and he studied at the Royal Academy of Arts. When he was 26, he started to exhibit signs of mental instability. He wrote to a friend, "I have lain down at night with my imagination so full of vagaries that I have really and truly doubted my own sanity." So he was having these visions. While passing through Italy, He expressed a wish to seek out and attack the Pope.
You know what? I get it. Did he have an AI girlfriend also?
What an interesting theme. He dropped out of school. His diet became unusual, and he lived for some time on nothing but ale and eggs. His dad noticed that Dad was not doing well. And
Dad's
dad, who was also named Dad. And the doctor said he needs to go to an asylum. His dad said, I don't think so. He needs quiet. He needs rest.
Tried to make me go to rehab.
And I said,
No. Daddy told me so.
This did not work out well for his father, unfortunately. They went for a walk in a park, and Richard Dad stabbed him and slashed his throat. He said that the god Osiris told him to do it. He fled to France, and while in a carriage, attacked a fellow passenger, again with a razor. When he was arrested, he was found to have a list of other people who had to die, and he was on his way to assassinate the Emperor of Austria, Ferdinand I. Now, this is not Franz Ferdinand, whose death started World War I, but it was his father. He told the doctors at the asylum that he had attacked his fellow passenger because he had received a message from the stars commanding him to do so. This is interesting. He has an interesting position in history because he was the first person to avail themselves of the McNaughton rules and was found to be insane rather than guilty of murder.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, instead of being hanged, he was being confined at the Bethlehem Hospital in South London.
He was a selfie.
Where he was held for the next 20 years. He got a lot of freedom in the hospital, even though he was a violent criminal. They said he was very charming and very sweet, and everybody loved his art.
Here are the criteria for schizophrenia. 2 or more of the following, each present for a significant portion of time during a 1-month period. Delusions? Yes. Hallucinations? Yes. I don't know about his speech patterns, disorganized speech, frequent derailment, or incoherence. I would imagine that probably was happening to this man.
Probably.
Grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, negative symptoms, i.e. diminished emotional expression or avolitions, just really flat affect. There were continuous signs of the disturbance that persist for at least 6 months. And for a significant portion of time since the onset of disturbance, the level of functioning in one or more areas such as work, interpersonal relations, or self-care, i.e. drinking beer and eating eggs, is markedly below the level achieved prior to onset.
The sad thing is he was being treated in the asylum. The treatment that they had at the time was cold baths and eating very plain foods. Some of his problems were because he was dealing with untreated schizophrenia. If he had happened to be alive today, things would have gone better for Richard Dad. His quotable quote is what he said after the death of his father: "Go and tell the great god Osiris that I have done the deed which is to set him free."
My thought is, what if Osiris is telling me stuff? Am I just supposed to ignore it?
If you ignore the words of Osiris, 1, he's going to punish you. And 2, you're missing out on an opportunity that not a lot of people have.
I didn't even get to murder my dad once.
Another male artist of the Victorian era was Louis Wain. I'm going to say that you probably were exposed to his art in your undergrad work in mental health, because that is where I first became exposed to him, because we can see different cats that he painted as a descent into schizophrenia. His ability to paint cats, if anything, got better and more intricate. But he is a precursor of psychedelic art, people doing it on purpose, where he was doing it on accident.
People doing it on purpose were doing it with the use of drugs. They were planning it. His brain was just doing this.
There is a not very good movie about him starring Benedict Cumberbatch. Nick Cave is in it briefly. It's a very empathetic portrait of him. But it's interesting because in the movie, he's always a little weird. He's always kind of a curious cat. He starts drawing cat drawings to entertain his wife, who is ill and who died very young. But in real life, his sister said that he was doing great until he fell off of a bus, and that all of his mental illness happened after that.
How old was he at the first onset of symptoms?
He would have been in his late 40s. I think he was probably ill before that.
He may have passed a certain threshold at that point. It sounds like he started having symptoms a lot earlier than that, because first onset of schizophrenic is symptoms
Usually 20s.
Yeah, 18 to 25, somewhere in there.
So he began drawing cats in his early 20s. He did not make money because he did not understand that you had to copyright your drawings. People were just reproducing these cats. In 1917, at the age of 57, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But his sister said he fell off an omnibus in 1914, knocking him unconscious. His first words when he came to were, "Is the cat all right?" Because he thought that the omnibus had swerved to avoid a cat. No one else saw the cat.
Did he have any Pets?
He had cats, but in the movie, they make a big deal of cats were kind of not seen as pets at the time. They were seen as working cats. You would have a cat in a barn. People did not love them the way they love them today.
Right. They were mousers, or they were there to take care of rodents.
He was committed to a mental institution. He kept drawing cats. H.G. Wells helped to have him transferred to a nicer institution where there were cats, but his once playful cats began to resemble fearsome, almost kaleidoscopic Hindu deities.
Yeah, that's the vibe.
The quotable quote from Louis Wain is, "A mouse in the paws is worth two in the pantry."
Accurate.
His cats are beautiful, and his cats are well loved by Nick Cave and his wife, Susie Cave. And Susie Cave made some t-shirts. My favorite Louis Wain cat t-shirt that she made has a drawing of a cat, and the caption is, "I fell in love with a lovely kitten, and that kitten was myself."
Okay.
That's how I try to live my life, just falling in love with the kitten that is me.
Have you ever known a schizophrenic person IRL?
I have known people who had symptoms of schizophrenia that then were medicated. So I guess I have known a schizophrenic, but not when they were active in their schizophrenia. How about yourself?
I have. It was a friend of my boyfriend's in college, and they were really close. But the thing you said earlier sort of struck something inside, because I remember when we talked about this guy, he was always super quirky and strange, and he had the weirdest sense of humor. And we just thought, oh, he's so crazy.
So offbeat.
And then by sophomore year, things had really taken a turn, and he had to be hospitalized and drop out of college. It's interesting how you go from being eccentric, you start out being kooky, and then you land on schizophrenia.
My friend also exhibited schizophrenia in college. And so I didn't know him then, but he said he was seeing angels and he was hearing things. He was also in an Ivy League school. It's a very high pressure school. He was medicated and has done really quite well. I think he had one episode when I was working with him in the early 2000s. He had an episode because he had ran out of medication and he didn't have the money for it. He nearly had to be hospitalized again. And I said, if it's $30 keeping you from this, please ask me. Let's do that. And in general, looking back at a lot of my friendships in my early 20s and in college, there were people who clearly had personality disorders. And I'm like, they're just kooky. He never wears pants and he carries a sword around the house. He's a real character. No, he has mental illness.
When we went to John's funeral, that was something a lot of people said. He was so crazy. No, he was pretty mentally ill.
Right. He had a lot of trauma. He had a lot of mental illness.
Oh, this is just an aside, but I was listening to comedians talk about how does someone become really, really funny? There was an interview with Jimmy Carr where he said a lot of people say comedians are funny because they're depressed. And he said, what you really need to know when you ask a comedian about their history is, were your parents depressed? Because it's most likely that their parents were depressed. And that's why they developed a good sense of humor to try to cheer up daddy.
Ding, ding, ding. I've seen that quote and it really hit me hard. John had a lot of mental problems, but he also was incredibly funny and incredibly talented. While I don't think we can say that mental illness creates great art,
it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hoit. There's a lot of people who have supreme mental illness who have never picked up a brush or a pen, who've never created anything. I'm not saying that you should pursue it in order to be a great artist.
All I'm saying is if you're already mentally ill, you might as well pick up a paintbrush and see what you can do with it.
The last artist I want to talk about has become very popular in recent years, and she's a real character, and she's a woman, Yayoi Kusama. When you hear her name, what do you think?
I think a very mentally ill lady who does really cool stuff with lighting and mirrors and rooms.
She does a lot of environmental art, and she'll create infinity rooms, a lot of them. There's one in LA that when it was new, you would have to wait for 5 hours to get into it for 5 minutes. And then when you got in there, you would take your picture. And so did I, because I'm an a-hole like everybody else.
We all are, let's be real.
She's very concerned with pattern, with repetition. She does a lot with a polka dot. She says one polka dot by itself is lonely and it can't do anything and it needs its friends.
That's fair.
What's funny is the polka dot has always been a party pattern and a symbol of community. The Romans thought of a dotted pattern as being a symbol of community. She's tapping into some real ancient stuff. Kusama experienced hallucinations and anxiety from an early age, which she attributed to childhood trauma and abuse. In her early adulthood, she was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and schizophrenia. Is that surprising to you that someone who puts dots all over everything has OCD?
I thought you were going to say has schizophrenia. Actually, it works for both. This is to me a sign of bipolar or schizophrenia is just this sort of blankness in your eyes.
And also look at how much white is showing on all the edges of her eyes.
What's that word?
4 sides white.
So she has sampaku, which is having the white area underneath your eye exposed. A lot of people attribute it to early death, which clearly has not happened to Yayoi.
It's also, in common parlance, they'll say if someone has 4 sides white showing, they're about to do something violent or they're a dangerous person and you should move away. She has been voluntarily living in a psychiatric hospital in Tokyo since the 70s. She is very prolific. She has used her work to express her hallucinations, her anxieties, and her inner turmoil. Her signature use of polka dots, infinity rooms, and self-obliteration pieces reflected her psychological experience. And my quote for Kusama is, forget yourself, become one with eternity, become part of your environment. And I like that idea, just spreading yourself out over everything and becoming nothing. And it ties in neatly with Edvard Munch's, from my rotting body, flowers shall grow, and I am in them, and that is eternity. Although he said it in Norwegian, which I'm sure is more poetic.
Do you want to know some other people who have sampaku eyes?
Yes.
Billie Eilish, Diana Ross, Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, Michael Jackson, Princess Diana, and John F. Kennedy. Also Twiggy.
So a lot of people who did die young.
Yeah.
Something to think about. Laura, what are your final thoughts on this topic of irresponsible diagnoses in fine art?
The good news is most of these people have already been diagnosed, so I don't have to do much heavy lifting. As you know, I heart art and always have a soft spot in my heart for art. I love creativity. If you're already going to be mentally ill, you might as well do really cool stuff with it. It is very sad. None of these people seem particularly happy to me. If we're going to circle back to our happiness episode, the story is that if you're very successful in whatever you do and you work very hard and you get a lot of adoration, you're going to be happy. And none of these people are happy.
No, that's a capitalist myth. It's not true at all. And being an artist doesn't make you happy. Making other people happy doesn't make you happy. That's not it.
I feel like all of these people were very committed to their calling, but I don't think it made any of them happy.
I'm also smiling because I Heart Art is something that I got from our friend John. It was in one of his comics and I just said it over and over.
I have a refrigerator magnet with it on my house. Circling back to our music episode, I feel like when you're mentally ill, you're always in the big feelings.
Mhm.
And so a person who's not mentally ill can still connect with your work when they are having the big feelings. You're sort of representing the extremes of life. I think that's why it's so beautiful and so passionate.
That's a great point. It is a recurring theme when we were talking about people who have synesthesia and how musicians might have mental illness where their feelings are very big and very profound. We can recognize them. If an author's emotions are at a 10, you can still recognize it when you're at a 3. And maybe it's more comfortable to do that.
To be more balanced, but also appreciate the artwork of people who are living at a 10. Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
My final thoughts on this topic are I'm fascinated by the idea that a lot of what makes modern art is borrowing from people who had organic mental illness. No one had the idea to make art that didn't look like their surroundings. They were forced to do it through hallucinations. All ideas come from somewhere. No ideas come from nowhere. And the fact that modern art came out of mental illness, I find really interesting.
Well, and the fact that it's through organic brain chemistry, that to me is pretty cool. It came from the factory.
Right. They say, write what you know, paint what you know. And if what you know is a spiky cat who looks like a monster,
go with that.
This was a theory that I read in the 90s, and I've never seen it come up again, but I find it so interesting that I'm going to share it here. Marcel Duchamp, who's another one of my favorite artists, retired from art to play chess for the rest of his life. He had a series of artworks called the Ready-Mades. Do you know the Ready-Mades? His most famous one was a urinal that he called Fountain, which is a very funny sex joke. But he had a bicycle wheel, a broom, things that were said to have been just purchased from a shop, but he made them important because he called them art. And he said, now this is a piece of art. I'm going to turn it on its side and paint something on it. And now it's a piece of art.
Yeah, he did a pretty cool iron with spikes on it.
He took a bicycle wheel, popped it on top of a stool, and that has created so much of pop art, of modern art, Andy Warhol, this idea that I'm going to find something and I'm going to elevate it. But the theory was people had researched pre-made snow shovels and brooms at the time and found that his were not like that. And the urinal was not like urinals that you would find in the market.
So he actually made a urinal?
He may have been making things and claiming that they were pre-bought things. All of modern art of that aspect is an in-joke that Duchamp played a trick on us, discovered after his death. And if that's true, I think it's the funniest thing in the world. He may have had a mental illness.
This is a working theory that I've been chewing on for a while. If you are in the field of art, whether you're a painter or a writer or an actor or a musician, if you get to the top of your field, you probably have pretty severe mental illness.
Because there's something that's been driving that. You have more than a casual relationship with your work.
If you watch any documentary about an artist, I recently watched a 20-part Billy Joel documentary. He just thinks about music all the time.
Mhm.
Everything about his life is his music.
And I watched a documentary about Blur from 2023, so it's very recent. In it, Damon Albarn, who's just been left by his wife, who loves him desperately, but because he is a maniac about work, and even when he wasn't touring, he would spend the night in the studio. It's something that all of his bandmates say about him, like, oh yeah, he's just an engine and that makes music. We go out and party, we pick up on girls. He's just hotel room writing music. And that's why he's done Gorillaz, he's done solo stuff, he's done Blur. He just keeps making music at the same pace. Couldn't cope with it.
Well, yeah, it's hard to have a relationship with someone who is single-minded, and their single-mindedness doesn't have anything to do with your relationship.
Right. I like to think that I could put up with it, but probably I couldn't.
Because she was with him for a long time.
Yeah, they were together 23 years. It's really sad.
Virginia, if people are interested in art and comedy, how would they go about finding out more about your art/comedy?
Thank you so much for asking. You can find out more about me on my website, which is badinia.com, BADINIA.com. That's also my Instagram, and that's also my TikTok. Although TikTok may be overtaken by fascists, so I might not be there much longer, which makes me sad. I recently did a show all about Dante Gabriel Rossetti and why he was an a-hole. And I yelled out, "This is art history humor. Hannah Gadsby, anyone?" And then nobody in the audience knew who Hannah Gadsby was. And then I felt bad.
Why didn't anyone know who Hannah Gadsby was?
I don't know. We're in Portland. Laura, where can people find you if they wish to do so? If they wish to either work with you or find out more about our podcast, My Sister's a Therapist, which is a snake eating its own tail, if you will.
An Ouroboros, as some would say. If they want to work with me professionally and they live in the state of Texas, they can find me at lauraryan.org. If you are interested in finding out about our upcoming episodes, you can go to mysistersthetherapist.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at My Sister's a Therapist Instagram page. And if you're interested in TikTok, before they become completely fascist, I can be found at I Am Laura Ryan on TikTok.
Laura, where can people write if they have a question or a comment or want to send us a nice note?
Well, if you want to have your own Zach's Corner, you can find us at hello@mysistersthetherapist.com. Of course, it wouldn't be called Zach's Corner. It would be called whatever your name is Corner. And if you're interested in selling an incredible product, maybe G-Sauce, potentially Liquid Death, Imperfect Foods, Costco. These are all food-based, I'm realizing. I heart art and I like food. I remember I had an ex-boyfriend and we would do this really stupid game and say the dumbest things on dating websites. We would ask really stupid questions like, do you like food as a conversation starter? Or do you like musical sounds? Do you have feelings?
That's an important question to ask a potential partner. Do you have any feelings?
Yes. After I broke up with this man, I blocked him on everything except for WhatsApp. And he sent me a WhatsApp message that said, do you like food? If you want to advertise with us, you can find us at Hire Us at mysistersthetherapist.com.
Laura, this is the part of the show where sometimes you will read a nice review or a comment or an email or just a love note that you found stuck under the windshield wiper of your car. Do you have something to share this week?
Yes, I'm going to read an email from our listener, Emily. Hello, Laura and Virginia. So I had this issue today where I should probably say no, but I don't know what I should be doing. I was talking with a colleague who told me about the podcast, and she said, well, you know, the whole idea of disappointed, like we're all disappointing other people as the decision makers of our lives and reappointing ourselves. I told her that was an amazing idea. And she said, have you listened to My Sister's a Therapist podcast?
Incredible.
Oh, it is amazing. They have an episode out called Just Say No. I fear that I have created a monster. Thanks for your advice, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome to the fold, and we hope you find other fun ideas to explore while you're here.
And also on that note, if you're here listening to this podcast right now, turn to your left, turn to your right, and just tell everyone you know what an amazing podcast you're listening to.
Be more like Emily's friend.
Be the Emily's friend in your friend group.
And on that note, I would like to initiate a small meditation on the words of our founder and a big force in our life, Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn. As he said, we can make it, baby.
Me and you. Bye.